Hello and welcome to the latest episode of Connecting the Dots, hosted by FourNine Marketing, a content marketing and SEO consultancy. I'm Neil Robertson, the founder of FourNine Marketing, and joining me on this podcast all the way from Raleigh in North Carolina is Stacy Eleczko to talk about her journey from educator to freelance copywriter. Stacy, thank you for joining. Did I get the pronunciation right?
You did. That's pretty impressive, Neil. Thanks for having me.
Thank God, because you were saying before that everybody butchers it. And I'm going to be honest, I was a little bit nervous doing that spiel there, thinking, right, I got to get this name right. So that is a huge relief.
Yep, you nailed it.
And I think the weather over there is probably a lot better than it is in the UK. It's cold, wet and windy, but we wouldn't expect anything less. So for context, Stacey and I have been talking on LinkedIn and video calls for the best part of a year, I want to say.
I think that's about right.
Yeah, we've had some great conversations. So, when I was curating my list of people that I wanted to be on this podcast, Stacey was a no-brainer. So, yeah, Stacey, we'll jump right in. You'll know this having watched the other podcasts, but basically, I always start with a tell me about yourself style question, like you might get in a job interview. But don't worry, I'm not a scary job interviewer. There's no wrong answer here. So, yeah, the floor is yours. So do you want to tell us about your journey so far and the areas you currently specialize in? Whatever you want, basically.
Sure. Yeah. So this is kind of a late career change for me. I've been in education for a long time, which story for another podcast, how I even got into education to begin with. But I launched my business on the side while I was teaching last year. And then I am part-time now, and I'm continuing to grow the business. And the goal is to resign in June, but I'm looking at I might be able to do it sooner. So I specialize in website copywriting and in email marketing. And recently I've been really excited about doing brand messaging work. So that's been a lot of fun.
Amazing. So, within that then, like, how would you, and this is a really kind of broad question, but, how would you reflect on your journey so far and your time in education? I mean, because I can imagine that there have been a lot of ups and downs along the way. How do you kind of look back on that journey over the last, am I right in saying, was it 2 decades, 3 decades? I want to make sure I get that right.
Yeah, it's been a lot of years. Thanks for aging me. It's actually my 22nd year in education. So it's been a really long time. And it's changed a lot over the years. When I started out teaching, I really loved it. I loved everything about it. And over time, it's just, unfortunately, like a lot of other teachers I've talked with, it has become less fulfilling. You're overworked, you're underpaid, you're underappreciated, unfortunately. And so, I've been looking for a long time to move out of it. Like 10 years ago, I was doing corporate job interviews, and then I was like, corporate's not for me. I didn't want to leave one thing just for something else that was going to feel the same. So I'd kind of resigned myself to, I'll be teaching until it's time to retire. And then I randomly found copywriting, and I haven't looked back since. I love everything about it. It's like the absolute perfect fit for me.
Were you surprised when you found out about it, but are you surprised on the journey that you've been on over the last few years? Because as you just said, the expectation, especially in an industry like education, I feel, is that you're going to be in that industry for life. That's just a job for you from the age of 20 to 60 or whatever. Was that a surprise to you, that not only that you came across this, I guess, but that you've actually managed to make it a career for yourself?
Yes and no. So I'm the kind of person, if I decide I'm going to do something, I'm going to do it. So I knew, like, just from day one, I was going to make this work for me. But I will say, it was kind of this whole, you retire from teaching, you've been in teaching forever. And I thought I was so far in, there was no way I was going to find something where I'd be able to replace my salary, and have, and find better benefits than what I would have had, right? Not healthcare benefits or things like that in the US, but I just mean, flexibility, freedom, those kinds of things. So, I think what surprised me about it is the thing that kept me from being able to shift careers is, for everything else, like, you needed a certain degree or a specific qualification. And there were all these jobs that I was not qualified for on paper, even though I could do the job. And with copywriting, I mean, no client has ever asked me for, can I see your certification? Can I see your pedigree? You can learn how to do copywriting well without having, a specific credential. And so it just felt really, I guess, invigorating to come across copywriting and go, wow, this is really amazing. And I have the skill set that I can do this. And then it was just a matter of making it happen. I think what surprised me the most is I never in a million years thought I would own a business. That just wasn't in the cards.
Yeah, me neither. I think that a lot of it does come down to mindset, because, it's like I said before, if people don't feel like they can venture into a new area and they just want to stay in their comfort zone, that's fine. But I think a lot of it has to do with you believing that you can be something else, or that you can do something else. And also, I thought what you said there was really interesting about no one has ever asked you about, oh, what's your certification with this, or what qualification do you have there? Like, we have a thing in England called GCSEs and A levels. So they're like, I don't know what you'd equate them to in America, but it's like when you're 16 to 18, basically you attain these qualifications and then you go to university off the back of that. Nobody has ever asked me what my grades were in English or maths or science or history or anything like that. No one has ever asked me what grade I got at university. No one has ever even asked me what university I went to. So I think a lot of the time we do go through our lives telling ourselves that we need to follow this linear path and everything's going to work out for us and people are really going to care about this. When in reality, once you get into the real world, and I know, I don't know about you, I hate that phrase, but it is true. When you get out into the world, people only care about one thing and one thing only, and that is the results you're going to get for them and how effective your work is. So I just thought that was really interesting what you said about that, because it just shows that, anyone could, in theory, do it. And I think that's like something that we want to get across to people, is like, maybe they work in education already, or they just want to be a copywriter and they're working in another industry. Like, you're proof, aren't you, that they can do that if their mindset is right.
Absolutely. Yeah. And I think that's the thing. That's where I hear so many teachers get stuck, is this idea of like, I don't even know what else I can do, or I don't have the right degree. Cause my degree was so niche for education that it doesn't apply to anything else. And so you don't even realize all the skills that you acquire as an educator that translates so well to so many other things in copywriting, I think, in particular.
Yeah, absolutely. One question I did have written down, which I didn't ask earlier, but I'd like to ask now, is when you look back on your career within education, how do you feel that you made a difference? What are some of the things that you look back on and think, I'm most proud of X, Y, and Z?
So there's two things that come to mind right away. One is just the relationships. I taught, when I first started teaching, I taught first grade and second grade, and those kids now are having babies and getting married. And it's really cool when I get texts of like pictures of parents moving their kids into the dorm room. I still keep up. I have coffee with some of my kids now who I taught when they were in first grade. Or I'll get a random message from a parent saying, I got one actually just recently from a student that I had when I had her for first and second grade. And she had done this speech, which was very, very out of her comfort zone. And her parents texted me and they're like, we attribute this back to you and building her confidence. And so that's huge. That's been the biggest, that's the thing I will miss the most when I transition completely out. And then the other piece is I've done a lot of equity work in education. And so that's really something I'm passionate about and that I'll continue to do. But I actually think leaving education is going to position me better to do some of the equity work, because you're so stuck inside with the bureaucracy and what you can say and can't say when you're in the system. I'm hoping that I'll be able to continue impacting that.
What an amazing story, though, about how you made such a life-changing difference to that person. That must give you so much pride when people are saying that, especially when you've worked with these kids during their formative years. I think there's a study, isn't there, where there's loads of studies on this, but kids are soaking everything up until the age of about 7 or 8. That's when their mind it's called is it crystallized intelligence? Am I right in saying that? Where it's I can't remember what it was, but anyway, some of their earliest memories will involve you, and then obviously they've gone on to take those learnings with them through life. And I definitely don't think it's the end of the road for you in that regard, because with copy and with copywriting, you could have relationships with your clients for 10, 15, 20 years, and you'll see the difference in them and their business, just like you'll see the difference in these, well, I'll call them kids, they're now adults. It's pretty scary, I guess, for you, but
it makes me feel old.
yeah. What a story. That's so nice. Like, you know, and that's the great thing about education. I mean, obviously I've never worked in education, but I know people who have, and they always say that's one of the biggest things, is knowing that I might have just said even one thing to them that sticks in their mind, and they'll use that as a mantra for their life, or it might prompt them to make a certain decision later on in life that changes everything. So that's awesome.
And it's the feeling. And I think that is something, like you were saying, that translates so well to copywriting. I had a parent that a couple of years ago reached out to me, and it was her son was graduating high school and had been asked, like, who are your favorite teachers? And I was one that he had mentioned. And she asked him why. And he was like, honestly, I don't remember anything she taught, like anything she said, but I remember that she always made me feel good.
Yeah.
And like, she just always was kind to me. And so, you know, I think, like you said, it's that relationship piece. You know, when you get into copywriting and marketing, people buy, you know, the whole, from people buy from people they know, like, and trust. And you have to build credibility. And that is something that is just such an essential part of teaching.
I love what you said there, because I actually used this phrase in a conversation the other day with somebody. You don't remember what people say, but you remember how they make you feel, for good and bad reasons. So like, if we were to apply that theory to being a service provider within the field of copywriting, we certainly know which prospects made us feel pretty bad about ourselves, or pretty bad about being a freelancer, and who made us feel like this was a sustainable career path and was worth pursuing. You know, like I've been around both sides, or both kinds of people. So I thought that was really cool that you said that, because it is true. Like I think back to my old teachers. The thing is, I do remember specific things that my teachers said, but only the good stuff. Whereas with the bad teachers, I just remember the vibes they gave me and the way they made me feel. I don't remember many specific things they said. But one thing that my English teacher said to me, so we had to write an assignment about what our goals and dreams were in life. And at the time, I really wanted to be a singer-songwriter. I haven't gone on to do that since, but I still do it on the side. And I've just started doing it again. YouTube, Neil Robertson Music, if you're interested. So I wrote this essay talking about my goals and my dreams in life. And she said, these are amazing, Neil Dash, keep reaching for them, with a smiley face. And no adult in my life, apart from my family, like none of the teachers I had, like even extended family, to be fair, like nobody had ever really said to me, go for your dreams, you know, this is worth pursuing, like you can do this. And just to even hear that from someone, like I still remember her name, Mrs. Kluwer, like that resonated so much with me, that one comment, because it made me think that someone out there really does believe in me. And I don't want to say that, listen, I'm not trying to say this as like all teachers are bad or anything, but you do get quite a lot who just kind of go through the motions and don't seem to really care about not just a child's academic achievement, or even like their mental development, but their emotional development as well, and actually making them feel like human beings. Like I'm just going to digress again, but then I'll shut up and let you talk. But basically, there was another program I watched on YouTube, and it talked about the private education system in the UK versus the public school system. Now, the public school system in the UK is fantastic. I'm not going to like slate the teachers or anything like that, because they are really good. But one big difference that I noticed between the way that the private educators approached the kids and the way that the public educators did was that the private educators shook hands with the kids, asked how they were, knew their names. So they were basically treating them like adults before they became adults and giving them that respect. And when you get a teacher in any school setting, whether it's private or public, that does that with you, that is, to me, a rare thing. I don't know what it's like nowadays, because I'm going back like when I was in high school. So I'm going back about 15 years. But I just feel that if you treat people like grown-ups from the get-go, and you treat people like real humans, whether you're talking about school or copywriting, when you don't treat people like they're idiots, basically, then you know, you'd be amazed by what they can achieve. That's the overarching point of my monologue there.
Yeah, no, I totally agree. And I think that's part of why so many people are disenchanted with education now, right? Is because I don't think teachers have the the time or the energy left for some of those basic things that brought them into teaching. There's just so much red tape and so many other things. And people are looking at data in not a great way to decide whether, I'm not sure, like here we have grading systems for the school. So like at the end of the year, the school will get an A, a B, a C, a D. Like I work at a school that's an F school right now. And it's not for a lack of the teachers doing their jobs. It's so many other systemic things. But people just feel defeated. And so I think that's why so many people are leaving. And when you feel defeated going into your job, you can't be the best for your kids and treat them in the way that they deserve to be treated. And I think it's just, it's systemic.
Yeah, and it's I think there might be some similarities between trying to pigeonhole kids and trying to pigeonhole your ideal customer. So like if you're a copywriter and you just throw a blanket over everything and tell people what they want rather than really kind of looking into it or asking them what they want, or having that data to hand when you write copy or writing something that's really bespoke. Whereas if you just say something really generic, like a really generic statement, like you need this solution for this purpose, it's like, well, no, I don't. You don't know anything about me. It's the same with a kid. I think there are definite parallels there. Like, how do you feel that the skills that you acquired during your time as an educator enabled you to succeed as a copywriter? So what are some of the similarities you've noticed between the two fields?
It's funny you asked. So I was trying to find it. I had actually started a while ago this whole document because I was going to write an article about like the skill sets that teachers have and how those translate over to copywriting. And I wish I could get my hands on it, but there are just so many things that, starting with, like you were talking about your target audience, right? Like when you're an educator, you can't just stand up there and talk at kids and expect that they're going to pay attention or learn or want to be there. And so you have to engage kids in the same way you have to engage your audience as a copywriter. You have to make people want to read what you write. Yeah. And so I think, you have to know exactly who you're talking to so you can position yourself. You have to know the interests of your kids when you're thinking about how you're going to present a lesson. In the same way, you have to really clearly know your audience that you're writing to when you're thinking about how you're going to message to them. Like we talked about the relationships and being credible. People, you're selling to people. It's not just, a click on the other side of the screen. There's a human there. And they want to be treated like people. And that's the same thing you see in education. Just thinking about even the planning. So, there's different standards that you teach. And when you're teaching the standards, you start off by thinking about what is it that you want kids to know? What is it that you want kids to do? And when I'm on discovery calls with clients, one of the first things I'll ask them is, what's the main goal of your website? What's the action you want people to take? Like, what's the message? What do you want them to know? And what do you want them to do by the time they leave your website? It's like, what's the ultimate goal? And then how do I start with that end in mind and go back to plan a path to get kids to learn what they need to know, or your reader to take the action you want them to take? When you think about sales funnels and where are people within those funnels?
100%.
I guess I don't need the list. They're just coming. I think about, there's just so many things. There's so many things, even just the external factors. When you think about with teaching, there's things you have control over and there are things you don't. And you have to focus on the things that are in your control. Like, how can I write to increase conversions? But ultimately, if you're not driving traffic to your website, it doesn't matter how great the there's an overall plan that things have to fit within. Gosh, I mean, I feel like that's a lot, but I could probably keep going.
No, keep going. If you want to keep going, keep going. This is a pretty chill podcast. We can go all day. So
yeah, I mean, okay, let's do it. So I'm thinking when I'm writing, people always talk about write for readability. You have to figure out how can you take complex ideas and break them down so that they're easy to understand. Same thing you do with teaching. There's this whole, when kids learn, you can think about, you have their attention span for like a minute per year. So 5-year-olds, you got 5 minutes max. And adults, we're the same way, right? Like you have to you've got to figure out how to get your message across clearly and concisely. I saw a LinkedIn post recently that really resonated with me. I can't remember who posted it, but they were talking about, everybody talks about trying to cut through the noise, but you are the noise. And I was like, that's so true. We want to think that we're trying to cut through the noise, but all we're doing is contributing. And I think there's no teachers, like sometimes it's like that, wah, 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 the whole Charlie Brown teacher. And so you have to figure out how is it that you're going to get people to listen to what you have to say.
Amazing. I love that example. So like, there were two things that came to me as you were talking there. The first thing I think is that virtually everything that you said could be tied back into this idea that you ask questions, you get the right answers, whether you're asking questions of yourself or asking questions of the person you're trying to reach out to. And you can apply that to education and copywriting. Now, I'm making a massive assumption here, so I'm more asking you the question, am I right in saying this? But I would have thought that if you had a kid or a group of kids who were underperforming, who you knew had good potential, but they weren't reaching that potential, one of the first things you would do would be to ask questions, but not just ask them a yes or no question, to ask them open-ended questions: what, how, why, which, when, etc. Maybe not when, because that's more of a narrow question, but you get the idea, right? Same idea if you're doing psychographic targeting for a client, like you would definitely want to ask those questions, but actually within the copy, you would want to ask some questions. Like I've done that a lot recently, where I think, well, rather than me talk at the audience, why don't I put it on them? Like, do you really want this? Or like, what results would you need for this to be, a service that you're interested in? When you send out emails, for instance, or if you put out a social media post, would you like to times your ROI by 300% or whatever? So first of all, I want to ask, ironically, I'm talking about questions. I'm going to ask you one now. Am I right in saying that? Have you found that that's a crossover between education and copywriting, is the importance of asking questions rather than talking at people or making assumptions?
Yeah, absolutely. And I would say both with clients and with the copy, right? With the audience. So just even starting with clients, if I'm talking more in the discovery call or in the onboarding process than they are, I'm not getting the information that I need to capture their voices, to get all the information. You have to listen more than you talk. And I think that's a classic teachers. We feel like we have to impart knowledge, right? Like we're the keeper of the knowledge and we have to share everything we know with kids, where sometimes if you just craft a question in the right way, you can get kids engaged in dialogue and get them sharing their thinking. And it uncovers for you what it is that they don't understand. Like, okay, what do they know? How can I build on that? What do they not know? And how can I help them understand that? And so I think it's the exact same thing when I'm posing questions to my clients. I mean, when I send my onboarding questionnaire, I've whittled it down to 20 something questions, but they're all so valuable. And I always tell my clients that I'm like, bear with me. If you don't know an answer to something, it's fine. We'll dig into it more. But the more you ask people and the more you get them thinking, the clearer they are on their visions and their goals and what they want. And that's true for kids and for clients. And then, when it comes to the copy, absolutely. Questions like you said, do you want this? If you ask that question in the right way, and that's exactly what they want, then it's going to resonate with that customer, right? You're going to give them the confidence to click on whatever or take that desired action because they're like, yeah, you see me. That's exactly what I want.
Yeah. I mean, and when I use the example of questions, are you a Simpsons fan? Can I use this example?
I haven't watched The Simpsons in a while, but I'm pretty sure I've seen all the episodes.
Well, I'll use this one example. So there's an episode where Homer has a really rich half brother that he doesn't know about. They were separated at birth, and Danny DeVito does the voice of the rich half brother.
Okay, I remember. I don't remember the details, but yeah, I remember that.
You remember the episode. So basically, he works for a car manufacturing company. He's the CEO, and he's in the lab, I guess you could call it, with all of the developers, and he's shouting at them, talking about customers specifically, saying, "Can I do it in Danny DeVito's voice, or try to?"
Yeah,
maybe try and do it. I don't know if it's going to be any good. He goes, "Instead of asking them what they want, you're telling them what they want." And I was like, yeah, I don't know how good that impression was. But that's the whole thing. It's like, I've had people land in my inbox on LinkedIn and on emails basically telling me what I want and to buy their solution. It's like, you haven't asked me what I want. Like, why would I even want to do business with you when you've just made that huge assumption that I even need your service. So that Danny DeVito line always rings in my head. It's like, instead of asking them what they want, you're telling them what they want, but ask them what they want. So I'm gonna make an admission on this podcast, actually. So when we had our first couple of calls, you know how I have this Otter AI tool? It's a transcription tool. I don't know if I told you about that. So you would have seen it, right?
Yep.
So I have this for every call that I'm on, and I talk about this in another podcast. But basically, I looked at the transcripts of our first 2 calls, and I realized that I had spoken in the first one we ever had, I think, for about 80% of the call. And I thought, oh my God, like I've got to make sure I don't do that. So when we went on future calls, I was more like, right, I'm going to ask more questions, because I can, I learn a lot from you, and I have done that. That's why, our relationship is so valuable, because of the things that you've taught me. But I then had a call recently with you, and I thought, right, I'm going to shut up as much as possible and try and to be fair, I think I talked for 52% of it still, which is still more than half, but it's a massive drop. And that's what I realized, is when I'm on prospecting calls now, when I get the transcript back, I aim for about 30 to 40% roughly of me talking versus them. I just thought, because when you said that, I was really intrigued to see what you'd make of that revelation. So yeah, 52% on the last call. So hopefully the next one I can be less than 50, because that's my aim. And the other thing that you said, this was the second thing I was going to come on to. You said we're writing for humans. And I say this all the time. I'll probably say this on every single podcast and bore the hell out of people saying it. But I did a sales training course in Birmingham recently. And the guy there said to us, remember, it's not business to business, it's human to human. We forget this. Like, I do quite a lot of B2B copywriting. You obviously do as well. And I think that, when you're writing like that, you sometimes feel as though you've got to write in this regimented, stuffy format for white collar workers, whereas you forget they're people as well. Everybody's people. And so what you said there about human to human was absolutely perfect, because I think as copywriters, you can forget that sometimes and just go through the motions.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, and it's funny, you talked about the percentage of talking. So I use Fathom to record my calls, and it will tell you, like, as you're doing it, what percentage you're talking, which I love. But then as soon as it gets like above 50%, I'm like, oh no.
Yeah.
But so, I'm not just in the classroom as a teacher. My current role is an instructional coach. So I actually partner, the 50% that I'm there at the school, I partner with teachers to support them with their practices. And I actually was just working with a teacher the other day on specifically that. Like, we were just collecting data on the time she was talking and the time the students were talking. So it really is so true. Like, the one in education, the person doing the talking is the one doing the learning, And so I think that that's so applicable too, when you're thinking about talking with clients, or, doing customer research and interviewing people like that. You've got to just be the one listening, so that, you can just, so that there's that balance of, let me ask the questions, let me really listen to what you have to say. Yeah. And I have to make sure that you're the one doing the talking, so that I can gain the information I need.
There's a great example that I want to use here. So I actually had a call with somebody earlier today, and on his website, he has a marketing suitability quiz. So which type of marketing is best suited to you? And I absolutely love that, because it's getting people engaged in active learning. So I use the example there of how a group of kids would sit in a room, and if the teacher is just talking at them for 2 hours, I mean, you talked about the attention spans of 5-year-olds. There's just no way that they can sit there. I mean, even when I was in high school and college, and even at university, I was hungover as a 21-year-old. I'm not going to be sitting there for 2 or 3 hours listening to someone talk unless they get me involved. I'm not going to take it all in. And I think the same principle applies when you're creating marketing collateral. You don't just want to have a wall of text, no imagery, no headings, but apart from that, you also don't want it to just be passive information. So interactive assets are so good for stuff like that. Like, anything that can get the audience engaged and get them really thinking, and also make them think, hey, this business really thinks about me and my needs. Like, they're getting me involved, and I feel more a part of that. I think that's invaluable. So I do think there is some interesting crossover there for sure.
Well, and that just made me think of a connection I've never even thought of before, but this idea of, when you're doing email marketing and thinking about segmenting your email lists, you're doing that based on very specific things. So like when you're teaching, if you know you have kids who are more interested in one thing over another, or maybe they have a process where they can show you that they've, mastered information through a presentation or by writing a song about it or doing an art project. There's just, I never thought about that connection before. You're going to deliver your message in a different way, or of different products for those kids, in the same way with email marketing, depending on how you came on my list or where you are in the buyer journey, my messages are going to be targeted specifically to what you need.
Yeah, absolutely. What you just said, I can't add anything to that. Yeah, I'll just go with that. Yeah, that's absolutely perfect. One thing I do want to ask about is what resources or learning methods you found most helpful. So, I mean, is there anything you can recommend to other people who might be watching this and looking to make the transition into copywriting as you have?
I mean, that's a tough call. So I would say one of the biggest things is I am super effective at productivity and time management. I learned that in the classroom and in teaching. And so I think that those are, even though it's not a copywriting skill necessarily, it's a business owner, it's a freelance skill. I think that that's really important, is kind of figuring out how you're going to effectively manage your time, because it's a huge shift when you go from a bell-to-bell schedule, or these are the things that are happening on this day, to managing and figuring out everything. I mean, even at the beginning of this month, I looked at my husband and I was like, I think I overpromised some work. And I was like, I'll get it done, but you're not going to see a whole lot of me when it comes to, evenings or weekends, because I had these clients I was super excited about working with. And I'm like, sure, I can get that website done, by the end of December, and they'll be done, and they'll be done well, but it's going to mean some extra time. So I think just expecting that there's ebbs and flows and ups and downs, just like there are with education, but in a different way. And then I would say the biggest thing is, it's hard. Like, don't go down a rabbit hole. When you figure out, and I definitely did. When you figure out if copywriting is the shift that you want to make, then just get good at the basics.
Yeah.
You can learn the rest of it later, but it doesn't matter whether I'm writing, a homepage or a sales page or an email or an ad, the same principles apply. And so, I think just, and then just go for it. Just do it. Just go for it. But also, teachers, you don't have a lot of money, so just make sure you get some backup. And it was funny. I met with a group of other people I met on LinkedIn actually last weekend. It was amazing. And they had all shifted from corporate to freelance. And so the whole conversation was about eventually being able to replace their income. And I said, well, I guess that's the positive thing about leaving education is, I'm working 50% this year. I was like, but sadly, it wasn't that hard to replace 50% of my income. So I don't know if that's motivating or not, but I think there's just figure out what you want to do, make a plan, do it. And then the biggest thing is build your network. That's been the best thing for me. And that's been the biggest surprise for me, honestly, is the networking piece of it, which I dreaded to start. But I realized it's just you're just making business friends, and those grow into great relationships, and a great support system, and eventually a referral network, often. And so just lean into that.
You've got so much on your doorstep. I saw your LinkedIn post the other day, and you're in a great spot, out there. Is it Raleigh? Did I pronounce that right earlier?
Yes. Yep.
Yeah. So you've got a lot of options there, and I think that what you just said there about you've got to get out there and do it resonates so much with me, because you're actually one of 3 people that I've spoken to this year alone who've made the switch from education to copywriting. And one of the biggest challenges that they've had, the other 2 people have had, is actually just getting out there and doing it, and maybe making the sacrifice. Now, I know that's easy for me to sit here and say, because my path was a little bit different. I had always worked in marketing before I went freelance anyway. So my income, it went up a little bit, actually. It was kind of a like for like replacement. Whereas I know that, especially when you've got like a family, or you've been in education a while, it can be very, very difficult to make that switch. So that they just said for them, it's a case of, right, I've just got to bite the bullet and do it. It's quite interesting that people are going from, corporate jobs earning like multiple six figures into, I'm like, why? But if they want to do that, then that's like, but you probably get more out of it. Like I know people who are lawyers and accountants and various other disciplines, and they just say things like, I get bored. They say they get bored doing it, and like I think that's what copywriting definitely does, is it stimulates you so much, and you never know what you're going to be working on one day to the next. So just sticking with that example though of the people that I've spoken to who are in exactly this, well, not exactly the same boat because everyone's different, but they followed a similar path to you. What advice would you have for other people who might be looking at going down that path in future from education into copywriting? Or do you know what, just anyone watching this who might know someone in education who one day wants to work in marketing, like what piece of advice would you give them? I'm really putting you on
just like one piece of advice, right? I mean, so I can tell you sort of what worked for me. And that was, I started off by just finding some friends and family members who owned businesses. And I was like, hey, this is what I'm getting ready to do. Can I do a project for you? And, for free. And I want to do it for two reasons: for the experience to figure out the process, and then also to get your feedback. And so that was sort of where I slowly started and eased into it. I launched my business while I was working full time. So I did it on evenings. I did it weekends. So I think go slow, but not so slow that you never make it happen. When I decided to go part-time, it was just, I'm going to go part-time and I'm going to make this happen. But if I don't do it, then it's never going to happen. And I can't grow my business. So I think, again, I guess it's just reach out to people, find support systems. That's what I did when I first started, is I found people that I knew that were in the field. And I just kind of said to them, where can I start? What should I do? They gave me some resources, and, and I think get an accountability partner. That was a huge aspect for me. I had two women that I had never met before. One of them posted in a Facebook group, and she was like, hey, I'm looking for accountability buddies. Who wants to join me? And the three of us started doing it. And we met every Monday, Wednesday, and Friday for 15 minutes. And there were so many times where I was overwhelmed and I was stressed out and I wanted to give up and I felt like I was never going to be able to do it. But I was like, nope, got to check in with them on Wednesday. And I said I was going to do this. So I'm going to do it, because I'm not going to get on the call and say I didn't do what I said I was going to do. So I think that would be a good piece of advice. Trying to think copywriting specific. I think in the beginning, it's just about, like I said, learn the basics. Don't get stuck and don't compare yourself to other people who are in a different place where you are. You can't compare yourself to someone who's been doing it for a year, for 5 years, for 10 years. Set realistic and attainable goals. Like this is one. So I think for me, I got super clear on exactly when I decided to go into copywriting, what my goals are, what my vision was, like what were my goals in a year, in 5 years, in 10 years, and then why. What were the things that I wanted? And I spelled those out really detailed about like, what's my why am I doing this? So that when I did get stuck, I was able to say, okay, but if I can do this, then that will get me where I want to be, which is here. I mean, my ultimate goal is to be able to spend a month abroad working every year.
Yeah.
Like that's the dream for me is travel. I know that's, sounds cliche, but it really is. Yeah. And so anytime, like this month is challenging. I have tons of client work this month. And I'm working more hours than I've had to work the past few months, but it's okay, because it also means that, when times are slower, maybe I can take a week and go somewhere. Mm-hmm. So, I think specific copywriting advice, I honestly don't know what I would say, except for like, you have the skills you need.
Yeah.
I mean, you heard me, I was able to just rattle a list of things off that are applicable and relevant skills, and just do it.
Yeah. I think for me, what I found really useful when I've worked in copywriting in one form or another for 10 years, because I started out as a journalist, then I worked in public relations, and finally in content marketing since 2017. But when I first started in content marketing specifically, and I was finding out about pillars and clusters and whatever the hell they meant, and blog posts and all these different types of material, I found Search Engine Journal really useful. So I'm going to do a little plug of them. I think their webinars are amazing. So, and like anyone starting out, I recommend that. Oh my God, I should remember this. What's it called? Copywriting Institute, CMI? Content Marketing Institute. I got there in the end. Their blog's really good. So good that I couldn't remember the name, but it is really good. Copy Blogger's really good. What would be some others? I think the main one I've found has been Search Engine Journal. I think their stuff is amazing. Search Engine Land is another one as well. So I just, to be honest, I just attended webinars when I started out and just listened to people who'd been doing it for 10 or 15 years. And honestly, that gave me enough of a grounding to then start writing page one articles, to write landing pages, to write social media posts. And I was doing a lot of this in my spare time. You know, aside from my job, I wasn't told to do this. You know, like even watching videos on how to use SEMrush, I had no idea how to use SEMrush. It was only through trial and error. I think fail fast is a thing as well. I do think you've got to just put yourself out there. And if you, and I don't even like to say fail, because to me, it's not a word in my vocabulary. You just learn fast. That's it. Like, learn fast education. See what I did there? But you know, I think that is a big thing. I love the idea, by the way, of having an accountability body. I've seen a lot on LinkedIn about this. I've never had one, but can you talk to me a little bit about that? I mean, have you ever got to the point where you've had to really kick someone's ass, or they've had to kick yours, or has it been quite amicable? Like, how have you found that dynamic?
Yeah, I mean, so for me, I am very much if I say I'm going to do something, I'm going to do it. So like one of my goals is in January or February to get my email marketing list started. So I'm saying it, I'm telling people, because now I've said it, I'm going to do it, right? It will happen. So for me, you know, it was never a matter of, it was more like, I didn't want to let someone down. I told you I was going to do something, so I'm going to do it. I think that's the key is I've tried accountability partners before where like your role is not to kick someone else's butt, right? Like you can like encourage and motivate them, but if you have someone that is consistently not doing what they're trying to set out to do, then that's probably not the best accountability partner for you. Like I think you need to find someone who's equally motivated and just needs that additional support. And then we did 3 questions every time. I'm trying to see if I can remember exactly what they were, but it was, what did you do since last time? What are you going to work on before we meet again? And what's blocking you? And like the what's blocking you was always the biggest, because it was almost always me. Like I was blocking myself. It was things like you talked about when I first started. I consumed all the material, which was great. I did webinars and I, you know, took all the free courses and all of the things. But then there's a point where you just have to start doing it in writing. You can't use it as a procrastination tool anymore. You know, you can consume all of the educational materials, but you're going to learn best by actually just getting started. And so, yeah, I think for me, it's find a good fit of someone else who you know is going to be equally motivated, and you're there as a support system for each other.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and it sounds like you've very much got that support system there. Like, you know, you've talked before about, you know, these people that you meet with, and obviously you said it earlier in the podcast, and it's so amazing to have that network of people who are not just acquaintances or peers, but friends. You know, you can get friends from these things. And I guess when you're friends with someone, there's always that extra 1 or 2% of willing within you to help them succeed, and vice versa.
Yeah.
So I think that's really important. As terrifying as this is to say out loud, we're right at the end of 2023 now. So I'm curious to know, what are your plans for 2024 and beyond?
Well, the big one I just said is I really want to get my email list started. So that's kind of top of the priority list. I have recently partnered up with a web designer, and so I'm pretty excited. We are doing a package together, but she's starting from being an independent web designer to creating an agency. And so we have created a website copywriting and design package that she's going to start promoting early next year. I'm excited about that. And I've built some great relationships with other web designers, so continuing to do that. I am wrapping up the beta launch of a Done With You website package. And so I'm going to start getting that out there. I'm going to start opening. Well, I have on my website that I have VIP days now, but I haven't been promoting them. So I'm going to start promoting those. I would like to get a YouTube channel going, and then I just have some other ideas. So those are the things I know I'm going to work toward. And then I also know I'm at a place where I probably need to start outsourcing some things, getting some systems and automations done to help make my life a little bit easier. Mm-hmm. And then just, I've got ideas for workshops and products and things rolling around in my head. So that might be a second half of the year goal.
Yeah, I think workshops are a great passive income source. I'm actually looking at developing that myself, and it is going to be a bit of a slow burner because there's so much. I mean, yourself, obviously, as someone who's worked within education, I'm just thinking, oh yeah, I'll do this course for entry-level SEO copywriters, and it'll be so easy. I'll just come up with a plan, one-page plan, get it out there and start making money. It's going to take a lot more work than that, as I've found out over the last few weeks. But that's definitely something I'm looking at doing. Yeah, YouTube, obviously I'm biased, but I've loved the response that I've received so far. There's absolutely loads that you mentioned there. That I think, there's probably a few things in there that I've actually written down some of the stuff that you said there, because I think that's going to be really useful for me. But packages are a big one. One of the things that the sales trainer said to me in Birmingham the other week was sell the yacht, not the dinghy. So I'm now not going down the route of, I'm not going to pitch myself in terms of hourly rates anymore, or even day rates. I'm just going to offer bespoke packages to people. Yeah, I think that's really important. Teaming up with the designer was another thing that you said that I wrote down. I've been doing that as well with a designer. So I do the copy, he does the web designs, and we're actually getting a bit of work now, which is amazing. So it sounds like you're doing all the right things basically. And I can't let you go without asking about cookies, because you have the strapline cookie connoisseur on your LinkedIn page. So I've jotted it down here. Did you see this question before we jumped on? I feel like I might be putting you on the spot if you haven't.
I did. I saw the question. And honestly, so go ahead and ask the question, and then I'll tell you what my initial thought was. Just
so the viewers are aware. I want to know what your top 5 cookies are and why.
So the first thing I thought of as soon as you said that is it would be way easier if you had just said for me to tell you about what cookies I don't like.
Okay. Yeah.
Yeah. I'm not a sweets person at all, but I cannot turn down a cookie. I don't know why. I don't know where this obsession came from, but I love cookies, especially anything home baked. And so I'll tell you my top is anything with ginger in it. So I could tell you at least 5 cookies. So just ginger snaps, ginger bread, ginger cardamom. If it's got ginger in it, I'm all over it. Yeah. And then my son makes these amazing chocolate chip cookies, better than a bakery cookie. So those are probably my favorites, but really you'd be hard pressed to give me a cookie I wasn't excited about.
Really? Okay. Ginger's an interesting one. So I'm just trying to think what cookie. I'm not a big cookie eater, and I know you're going to hate me for saying that. We do have, oh my God, what is the cookie brand that I'm trying to think of? They have it in a shopping mall over here in the UK called the Trafford Centre. Name me some famous cookie brands. It's got a stall. It's not Krispy Kreme, because that's the donuts, but it's oh God.
So I'm a cookie snob too. I like bakery, fresh baked cookies. So yeah. I probably can't tell you some of those brands. I do love just those cheapy ginger snaps. Those are amazing.
Yeah. Oh, see, it wasn't. I know Chips Ahoy's big in America. Whenever I've seen Chips. Annie's is another big one. It wasn't either of them, but I'm just going to read these out for the hell of it, because why not? Do you have a favorite brand, or do you just said there you're not really bothered? You just.
Yeah, not really. I like cookies from the bakery, or my husband and son both bake, and so I'm pretty lucky. There's not usually a shortage of cookies.
So if you landed a project with a cookie manufacturer, if that's that, how excited would you be on the scale of 1 to 100? Imagine if you got a website project for that.
I don't know if you could tell, my eyes just lit up. That's funny. I had never even thought about that as this could be a potential ideal client, but I'm not sure if there is somebody who would be better to sell a cookie. That'd be pretty exciting.
If you Googled, in fact, I might even do it after this, just Google cookie stores in North Carolina, like just to go for as many cookie businesses as possible. Just ring them all and say, like, I love cookies. I love cookies and I love writing. So just hire me now. I think that'll work.
I love it.
Say it word for word like that, and it'll work.
I'm going to try it and let you know how it goes. I like right off the top of my head, I can think of 2 of my favorite cookie places.
Okay, well, there you go. Stacy, thank you so much for coming on and giving me some brilliant insights. I really appreciate it. Where can people find you if they want to connect with you or ask you anything?
Yeah. So first, thanks so much for having me. This was fun. So I'm on LinkedIn, and then they can also find me on my website, which is nearly impossible to spell. Maybe you can link it. But yeah, it's just www.stacyeleczko.com. Yes, the www wasn't necessary, but
You never know. People might not know it. So yeah.
Yep. But then eventually YouTube. But for now, my website and LinkedIn are the 2 best places.
Yeah, and I'll put the links to those in the description for this video. So, Stacy, thank you once again. It's been an absolute pleasure. And yeah, go and enjoy some cookies, I guess.
Awesome. Thanks, Neil.